came out of was my project Viewing Hours, which where I buried myself under over 40 pounds of compost and decaying flowers to honor uh, the ancestor Marsha P. Johnson, who is one of my who's a really important figure in my life. She was a trans uh, activist, um, was involved with, starting the Stonewall riots and or uprising, um, and just her way of being in the world and her approach to life, pay it no mind, was what the P stood for, and her vivacious energy in the world and what she gave to us, and her she was a gender warrior. I mean, she just defied all odds, as a black trans woman. And so for me, being in that space of like really challenging the binary, the gender binary, but all binaries, is definitely like it's a fertile, compostable place. And even coming into your home, Bush, you were like, come to Scotland whenever you want, and I just showed up.
In a pandemic.
And you welcomed me, and I didn't know what to expect, and I'm sure you didn't know what to expect. And so it was just nice to like land there. um I think something that I've been dealing with a lot is just the exhaustion of being an artist in these times, um especially being, a black artist and a queer artist, and um but more than anything else, it's like there's so much that is expected of us, and I think that there's just a huge imbalance, in how the actual energy that you can give, and then what you're being asked to do, or who you're being asked to be. And it's just like, in a way, I feel like the decomposition is can be a radical push against that, like, polarity of capitalist artistic production. Oh, I just want to, like, you know and to continually slow down, like, I'm going through changes, we're all going through changes, everybody has problems, everybody has, something going on. And and so, yeah, it was really nice, because even when I was at your place, I remember the day that, because I say this one mantra all the time: the universe loves me, and somehow this will work out to my advantage. And that came from this really awesome astrology book that I'm always reading. Uh, and but when I was at your place, another part of the mantra came to me, and that was just to acknowledge the day. Today is a great day. Today is the most beautiful day of my life. The universe is smiling upon me, and the universe loves me, and somehow this will work out to my advantage. And then Bush and I, we just started saying that together, right?
They did.
So, yeah.
Maybe I should say something about, as you say, you showed up at the door, we didn't know each other, we didn't know what to expect because we had very minimal contact.
Yeah.
So I want to confess, and it's part of the reason that we're cooking butternut squash is because this is what I cooked for Mayfield when they arrived. And this was based on an assumption. This was based on a stereotypical assumption. And I want to be upfront about that. That I imagined, in my stereotypical view of the world, that I imagined that this non-binary African American radical performance artist who was going to come and stay with me would be vegetarian. So I better learn to cook vegetarian and quick. So this is the significance of this. And you said something to me about that, and it stuck in my head. Assumptions make asses of all of us.
I didn't realize you assumed that I was vegetarian.
So did I not tell you?
I don't think so.
Now you know.
I'm mostly vegetarian. Mostly.
Yeah, so
But
it wasn't problematic, I guess. I mean, I suppose that's the joy of
but I
vegetarian food.
but I think something that came up with us between us was just this idea that like, because you're from such a different location culturally, you know, cis white male, straight, whatever that means. Um,
Yeah,
and just it was just like I think I remember hearing you say that you weren't, you just didn't think we would get on so well, right?
yeah, it was a surprise to me.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really thinking about it. I was just like, oh, I got a place to stay in Edinburgh. And this person is very generous. And so I think, yeah, I feel like that was something that we talked about.
And can I return to the decomposition
Yeah.
and the artwork thing? Um, that is, I'd heard about deconstruction, but I'd never heard this term decomposition until you arrived in my life. And as you know, I mean, one of the things that connected us on the very first time we met was that I was interested in you as an urban farmer,
Yeah.
not as an artist. And maybe people need to know I have never seen your work live. So I feel that our our meeting was about two people meeting, and that the point of reference for me anyway was urban farming, because
Right.
I'd recently started to volunteer at our community croft. And the croft, for those people outside of Scotland, is a small enclosed piece of land that's designated for food production. And there's one here, and it's actually where we bought the butternut squash.
Yeah.
But what interested me about this was that deconstruction has got human hands all over it. It's very, very consciously, intentionally taking something apart.
Right.
And what I enjoy about this concept of decomposition is that it seems to have a much more natural flow to it. And it's slightly different every time it happens. Right now, the leaves on the trees that were so full when you were here have mostly fallen, and they've begun their process of decomposition.
Right.
Prior to the pandemic, there was a lot of talking about we need to slow down, we need to slow down, we need to slow down.
Hmm.
And then boom, the plug got pulled.
Yep.
And that seemed to me then that felt like, here's a time where artistic decomposition can possibly begin. And I've started to embrace that in my own life. I'm nearly 70 years old, and I can feel that my own decomposition is kind of beginning.
Hmm.
But leaning into that time frame, I find very comforting.
The time frame of decomposing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something that's happening for me with that is that like I feel like I get wound up and there's things to do and there's requests coming in and there's you know work going on. And then what I'm trying to do right now is like rewind a little bit. Like how can I um find a way to just not say yes to everything and just kind of, kind of pull back a little bit and find space within, find space for myself within this process of creating. Because I think what's happening now, it's like the world feels like a pressure cooker. You know what I mean? There's climate change. There's, in the States, as you can see, we have so many issues. I mean, I could just go on a list that's never ending. But the militarization of life in this country is like a real issue. Just, and it's been an issue, but it's just like the guns and the police brutality and just this kind of ongoing militarization of life, just so my practice that I call improvising while black came out of my experience of being racially profiled by the police. And I was basically put in jail for nothing, for driving while black. And so I took that experience as like a way to start to understand my practice as a dancer. And improvising while black for me is a way to like acknowledge like the what I'm calling the decomposed matter of black life. And so within that decomposition, there are no answers. It's in the question. It's not about identity, it's not about politics, it's about what is happening experientially. And so so it's more of a conversation, like we're having right now. I'm not saying this, I know this is, what I know. No, it's more about what I don't know.
Mm.
I'm interested in being in that space of not knowing.
Yeah. And that was quite interesting. Kind of, we go back to the beginning about the state that you found me in was exactly that. My age, all my profiling and how I saw my life developing in this linear way suddenly got thrown out of, thrown off course.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm in this place of, oh, I don't know anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose what I've tried to do since you were here is to embrace is also to embrace that not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And continue to ask questions, but don't bother myself if I don't come up with the answer.
Right.
Because maybe it's unanswerable.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually a good assumption to make of like, you know, not having, assuming that I don't know.
Hmm. Just back to the cooking for a moment, if people are following, which who knows, you can start to chop your tomatoes. If you've got sun-dried ones, great. If you've got fresh ones, great. I would chop them quite small, personally. So 1 cherry tomato into 4. Ooh, is it done?
I think so.
What, what are you gonna have? What are you gonna have with it?
Oh my gosh, it's done.
Oh well, lucky you.
Wow.
What are you gonna eat with it? What are you gonna accompany it with?
I got some spinach.
Oh, you gonna wilt it or?
I was just gonna rinse it off.
When you were farming, did you grow spinach? I seem to remember we had a conversation about growing spinach.
Yeah, I grew spinach. There's many different varieties of spinach. Um, and this is Rock and Roll Organics. I
Rock
guess
and
that's
roll.
Rock and Roll Organics. That's cool. But I don't know what kind of spinach. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't say what variety it is. Um, I think spinach is really easy to grow. It grows closer to the ground, so really got to rinse it well. Um, and then I'll take my plate, and whenever I don't have to use a knife, I really just try not to use a knife. Just
Is there a reason for that? Is
I
there,
watch too many YouTube videos. And I was watching a YouTube video about mushrooms and how they were saying how it's better to not slice them with a knife, just kind of break them in your hands, and the flavor is there. And so I just apply that to other things.
okay.
So now I'm gonna cut this squash in half and just ooh, put this part right on top of the spinach. Sprinkle a little olive oil on top. A little more pepper, a little more salt,
They're natural.
and just a touch of apple cider vinegar. They're really going at it out there.
Yeah.
There we go. And then got my fork, got my knife, and I'm just gonna try it. I used smoked Gouda because I forgot to get the goat cheese.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it.
Bush is gonna have the goat cheese. And I'm just gonna try it.
I'm so hungry.
Wow,
Good.
really good. Okay, that's amazing.
Can I rewind a little bit into the conversation where we're talking about slowing down, about pushing away this capitalist culture that independent artists feel, and the need to make money in order to live. And I witnessed you in the last 6 to 9 months really getting some traction now that this Bessie nomination and Princeton fellowship, people are now coming to you with please can you do this, please can you do that. So the trappings of success are beginning to arrive. How are you managing that?
That's a great question. I think that for me, it's there's a lot of different layers of what's happening right now um, in my life as an artist. So there's the kind of personal success, I guess you would call it, which I'm 51, so it's been a long road already. Um, and it's just interesting to have been working this long since I was, in my 20s as a dancer and as an artist, and to now my work is now, yeah, getting attention. At the same time, I just feel like there's so much, my heart is breaking a lot. Like, you know, my parents are getting older, my dad has dementia. Um, it's a very interesting time of life to be, you know, working on my creative work, but also noticing how in my family sphere, uh, just how incredibly hard it's been, and how hard they've worked, and I don't get to celebrate my so-called successes with my family, you know, because there's so much trauma happening and so much people are sick, you know, it's just really intense. I mean, you know, two members of my family have cancer. One member of my family had gangrene in their leg. I mean, it's just been even this past month, you know, and to try and hold that, and then to also be in my work really wanting to create community, you know, with this COVID social distancing and social rupturing happening, and wanting to come together with people, but not necessarily, you know, navigating how do we come together now. And I was working with another artist, and they were like, we're still learning how to come back together after being apart and being separated, and it's a different kind of coming together. And so I think I feel incredibly privileged and grateful to be in a space of to be supported, you know, for my work to be supported in this particular way. But it wasn't until this past year and a half that I literally got my first grant, you know,
It,
after working for 30 years. And then you know, the Merce Cunningham Award came, and then, you know, it was just like, wow, this is. And also just talking to other artists who, because that the Foundation for Contemporary Art supports artists who are very experimental and they're committed to it, and my work is very experimental. And so I work, you know, very much in a space of like a friction, you know, like I'm trying to I am trying to decompose that proscenium stage. I am trying to when I use my voice, you know, I'm working with pre-language. I'm working with speaking in tongues, you know. So like a lot of it might not be legible,
mm.
and that's very much part of the decomposing, I think.
And do you find that the work potentially is not legible? Do you do you experience that as a impediment when it comes to showing the work? And I think showing is an interesting word. I'll come back to.
Mm-hmm. No, not at all. No, that's what it is. I mean, I'm not trying to be anything except what it is. You know, it's just I'm just a vessel. And you know, I mean, we've talked about ancestors. Oh, the webinar is now streaming live on YouTube. Cool.
Okay.
um, maybe we can hear a little bit of that Aretha Franklin.
I got a message saying that the Anna wasn't sure she could contact Fabian, but we can try.
Oh, okay.
You give the orders, Mayfield.
It's
Fabian.
holy, holy, and I think it's gonna come in a little bit.
Oh, he's there in the chat.
Yeah, we wanted to spice up our conversation with a little bit of
I'm
music.
here. I'm here alone.
Do you have that Aretha Franklin track? You think you could bring that up for a minute?
Sure, sure. Let me play that.
I'm gonna taste my squash again. I
Can-
definitely, if you
Here we
have
go.
any kind of, oh, thank you.
I better check mine.
Taste my squash. I definitely.
You can feel it on the streets on a day like this. That we feel like summer. I feel like summer. I feel like summer. You can feel it on the streets on a day like this. That I feel like summer. She feel like summer.
But that song is so great. Maybe I can share it. We were also going to share a quote from.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about. Oh, that's okay, Fabian. We can shift into another direction. Um, something that a book that I read over the pandemic was Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. And Bush and I were talking about it, and I said, Bush, we need to share a quote from this book because it's all about empathy. The main character has a condition where she can feel other people's pain, and she ends up having this incredible journey in the book. And I highly, highly recommend it if you haven't read it, and if you have, read it again. um, but we found this quote, and I thought we both read it, and we wanted to just share it. And also, if you're here with us or listening, please ask us questions. We are open to having a conversation with you. We have about half an hour left, so please, this is a community effort. You want to start with the?
I'm having technical issues here, Mayfield, so maybe you could read it. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I could also share my screen if
I'll try
that
that.
helps.
You know I ain't no digital ninja.
I know, but
Oh, there you go.
I'm wondering if people can see it.
See it that?
Yeah? Okay.
Can't see the section you highlighted. There we
Yeah.
go.
So at this point in the story, this is kind of the beginning. But Lauren is talking about her condition, and she says, I can take a lot of pain without falling apart. I've had to learn to do that. But it was hard today to keep pedaling and keep up with the others when just about everyone I saw made me feel worse and worse. My father glanced back at me every now and then. He tells me, you can beat this thing. You don't have to give in to it. He has always pretended or perhaps believed that my hyper empathy syndrome was something I could shake off and forget about. The sharing isn't real, after all. It isn't some magic or ESP that allows me to share the pain or the pleasure of other people. It's delusional. Even I admit that. My brother Keith used to pretend to be hurt just to trick me into sharing his supposed pain. Once he used red ink as fake blood to make me bleed. I was 11 then. and I still bled through the skin when I saw someone else bleeding. I couldn't help doing it, and I always worried that it would give me away to people outside the family. Can you see it, Bush? You want to read the rest?
I haven't shared bleeding with anyone since I was 12 and I got my first period. What a relief that was. I just wish all the rest of it had gone away too. Keith only tricked me into bleeding that once, and I beat the hell out of him for it. I didn't fight much when I was little because it hurt me so. I felt every blow that I struck, just as though I'd hit myself. So when I did decide that I had to fight, I set out to hurt the other kid more than kids usually hurt one another. I broke Michael Tolkert's arm and Ruben Quantilla's nose. I knocked out 4 of Sylvia Dunn's teeth. They all earned what I did to them 2 or 3 times over. I got punished every time, and I resented it. It was double punishment after all. And my father and stepmother knew it, but knowing didn't stop them. I think they did it to satisfy the other kids' parents. But when I beat up Keith, I knew that Corey or Dad or both of them would punish me for it. My poor little brother, after all. So I had to see that my poor little brother paid in advance. What I did to him had to be worthwhile in spite of what it would do to me.
And then I guess right down here it says, you know, being the most vulnerable person I know is damn sure not something I want to boast about. I can't do a thing about my hyper empathy, no matter what Dad thinks or wants or wishes. I feel what I see others feeling or what I believe they feel. Hyper empathy is what the doctors call an organic delusional syndrome. So we'll stop there, but wow.
Yeah,
What a concept, huh? Hyper empathy.
absolutely. I mean, I don't think I suffer from it, but I certainly feel like I'm an empathetic person. My timer went off, so I need to check my squash.
All right, check it out.
That's not an excuse to wriggle away from the notion of being hyper empathetic.
Ah,
It's a straight man thing to do, isn't it? Oh, I just have to check the oven.
well, I'm not going to let you off the hook, Bush.
I didn't expect you would.
I definitely recommend, if you have any greens, even if it's lettuce or mixed greens, to put it under the squash. It's very nice. The spinach really works.
So there's the squash. I'm just going to put a few tomatoes into that. I'm using goat's cheese. Soft goat's cheese, and just put a little bit of that in with the tomatoes. When I look at it now, I wish I'd scooped out more kind of carriage for the tomato and the cheese. And then put it back in the oven. For 10 minutes. There we go. Okay, I'm back in the room. I was going to do some potatoes. I don't know if you remember, but I was growing potatoes.
I remember. Yep.
Yeah. but I don't think I'm going to do that now. So
I
what?
I remember something we were talking about. It was it kind of relates to hyper empathy of like how do we even talk to each other if we don't, you know what I mean? How do we even have a conversation if like it's almost like a contradiction, you know, in that if you're like, oh, I'm this, you know, this is I'm a white male, I can't have a conversation, you know, with Mayfield, or I'm like I can't have a conversation with Bush, and I feel like there is a kind of um, incommensurability. There is incommensurability in our positionalities in the world, and yet at the same time, to be able to be vulnerable and to be empathetic is the contradiction that also lives within the other contradiction. You know what I mean?
Mhm. And I was just wondering, as you were saying that, you know, is the practice of vulnerability a gateway to empathy? You know, is it a necessary part of the practice of being empathetic to practice vulnerability?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, that's what drew me into you. You know, when you were vulnerable, I didn't expect it.
Hmm.
I think that I don't know. I'm curious to hear what folks think about this. Like, I don't expect people to be vulnerable in general. You know, do we have any questions?
No, I was just checking. No.
Someone said that your squash looks amazing.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, I mean, if anyone has any comments or questions about that question, can vulnerability open us up to empathy? You know, but I think that part of it is that like the other thing that we talked about was that I was telling you about the project that I did in Munich in 2020 where I asked the audience, "What are you willing to give up for me?" Right?
Mhm.
Because everybody's talking about reparations, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it just starts with the question of if you are in a position where, you know, your ancestors were responsible in some way for the demise of my ancestors, then where do we even start?
Mm.
You know, I mean, it's going to take centuries for these healing processes, this decomposition to actually, you know, if people are committed to the work.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? I
But
mean,
then it's like when I said that to you, you actually again surprised me with your response. You want to talk about that?
well, maybe first of all, I just want to say that before I met Mayfield, I'd heard this question that there was this African American artist who'd asked a bunch of audience or a bunch of white people in Austria, what were you prepared to give up for me? And I thought that the question went straight to the heart of the issue around white supremacy and the position of white people in the world. And I think I mused on it for more than a year.
Was that another artist or was that me?
That's you.
Oh, that because that was in Munich.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I said Vienna.
Okay.
Before I even met you, before I knew anything about you,
Oh,
I heard that question that you had asked.
okay.
And I thought it just in the way I found you, which is very direct and straightforward. For me, it went to the heart of the issue for myself. What am I prepared to give up? You know, in this position of 30 years as an artistic director, with a salary, with the things that a lot of independent artists don't have, getting towards the end of my life, what am I prepared to give up now that's going to mean anything? So I think that question attracted me to you, as like, who is this person? Well, you want me to talk about what I said?
Yeah, because it also, I think, again, when we have that conversation about that event in Munich, you said to me, I'm willing to give up my time and, you know, my space, and it just made me feel like welcomed, like,
Mm.
you know, like held. And people don't say, I haven't had a lot of people say that like directly. This is what I'm gonna do.
Uh,
And so I'd love for you to talk about what that was for you.
well, I felt that it was a question that deserved an answer,
Hmm.
actually, that somehow, I mean, you'd never asked it to me, but I'd heard it as a question. As I say, I thought it was a direct, clear, and relevant question for me to listen to. And I thought about it a lot. It was like, well, what can I give up? Never mind, you know, what am I willing to give up? It is what have I got that I can give to this person that's going to be of any value? And I think, you know, one of the most valuable things to me now, I'm 6 months off being 70 years old, in the autumn of my life, that time has become quite precious to me. So it's like, well, I've got something precious, which is my time, and I want to give it to you. So that's what it was. It was like, I'm prepared to give hours and hours and hours of my time for you. And the extraordinary thing about it is that, yeah, I've given you some hours, but you know what? I've had so much back that it's not like, it doesn't feel like a gift anymore. It's like, it doesn't feel like I'm giving anything. It feels like this is the way it is with Bush and Mayfield. This is what we do.
This is what we do. We just, yeah. And I feel like there's a fluidity in it because of that. Like when you make an agreement, you know, like, I mean, I think part of showing up on your doorstep was like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to trust this process. I don't really know who this person is, but the invitation was there. And then to just relax into, you know, how that unfolded for me was really beautiful. And, you know, our cooking together, our walks with Molly, your beautiful greyhound, um, and just sharing that time and being able to open up in ways that I wouldn't open up normally to anyone.
Uh-huh.
You know, because part of it was like because you said you said it. I have my time. This is what I have, and I think that I want more people to do that. Like maybe this exchange, this conversation, you know, this friendship that we have can also inform other ways of being, you know, of being together. I mean,
My timer just went off, so I need to check the oven.
okay, and I'm gonna turn on my light. It just got cloudy over here.
I'm going to give it 5 more minutes.
Okay. And we're kind of towards the end of our um
Well, we started late, so we've got at least another 10, 15, I would say.
Okay. I would like to see if I can play a little bit of this Aretha just to give us a little breather. Sounds like we got a break from
The construction. What time is it?
it's 3:21 over here in the States.
They haven't gone home though.
No. All right, here we go. Can you hear that, Bush? Well, I grew up in the church. I grew up singing gospel music. I gotta bring this in.
Aretha.
Aretha.
Come together, holy people. We have got to come together with all of the strength, power, and all of the feeling.
Love the feeling.
Holy, holy. Come on together, one another. Holy, holy. We should believe in each other's dreams. Jesus left a long time ago and said he would return, but he left us a book to believe in, and in it we got a whole lot to learn. Yeah, yeah, holy, holy. We can conquer hate forever. Holy, holy, holy. We can rock this earth's foundation. Yes, we can. Can't you see us, brothers and sisters, talking about love, 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 holy, holy. We can rock this earth's foundation. Holy, holy. Can't you see us coming together?
Oh, DJ in the house.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like that, just the texture of it. You know what I mean? Like the texture of like the invitation. We can rock this earth's foundation.
If we come together.
And not some old measly like, oh, I'm just coming together with my friend here. No, like we gotta make a commitment. Like, You know what I'm saying? Like this empathetic like field, because empathy can be really problematic if people start to kind of like what the girl was talking about, like to push you into a space of um, denial of what the feeling is, or what the circumstance is, or what the experience is, right? Like there's so much coming at us that's telling us that our experience is not that I'll say me, my experience is not my experience.
Hmm.
And I mean, from what you're saying, I mean, how do you, what do you think about that?
I'm a bit distracted by the oven.
That's your experience. Is it ready yet?
I'm just checking. Yeah, I think that's good to go.
All right. Oh my. Let's see what you got here. Beautiful.
I just need to transfer it to a plate.
Yeah.
I hope our guests, theirs is as good.
Do you have any greens? Like,
Yeah.
no?
Remember, there wasn't a lot of green stuff in this house.
Okay.
That's a little bit of a.
I remember. I had to get you to buy some greens.
We had to import greens.
Mm-hmm. Looking for
I thought, yeah, looking for a plate.
I'm gonna take this other, look at this. This is my other hack. I'm gonna bite it. Mm,
How is it?
it's really good. I mean, I would recommend
Well, you know what I forgot?
what?
Pine nuts.
You forgot to put the pine nuts in your mix?
Yeah.
You can just sprinkle them on top.
Yeah, and then I'm going to put it back in for 3 minutes just so they
Oh, yeah?
brown. So sorry everybody, if you haven't put your pine nuts on, put them on now. Oh.
The pine nuts are really amazing.
The pine nuts kind of finish it right, don't they?
Yeah, they give it the. They give it what it needs.
As you know, I'm not that great at multitasking. I'm just trying to process your question about. Can you ask it again, Mayfield, please?
All right, I have to rewind. The one about the commitment to.
Yeah, over emphasizing.
So, just how I feel like so much about the maybe I don't know. I'm reframing it a little bit. Maybe the work of the artist, or the work of like you're a supporter of artists, producer, dramaturge, and you did acting. You were a performer at one time.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And so this work of what that many artists do of exposing themselves. Some people put their bodies on the line. Some people, it's depending on the work. It's there's exposure. And when I think about that story, parable of the sower, how this character kind of had to fight her way into being because she was marked by vulnerability, she was marked by this hyper empathetic, vulnerable way of being. And in a way that reminds me of like the role of the artist, but how do we, I don't know, just how do we like kind of carry each other through that? Because it's a very tricky space, and I think that like what I mean by that is that it's just sometimes I have to pull back. Like I can't give so much. I have to say no. I have to allow others, I have to be able to fall back into the arms of others, you know, or be cushioned by.
I think certainly during my period, the time that I was a artistic director, leader of institutions, that I probably, whether consciously or not, I'm not sure. I switched. I turned down the empathy volume because it was too difficult. As you say, I was a performer. I was earning no money. I was trying to get opportunities. So I understand and empathize with that position. But when you are handed the reins or you're handed the power controls, it's difficult because you empathize with everybody. And so I think I began to turn it down, if not off even. And in doing that, didn't allow myself to be vulnerable, built a kind of carapace of something, and a bit of loneliness, because if you show too much affection or too much support for one person, then other people go, well, why are you supporting them and you're not supporting me? You get caught in this maelstrom of demand. And I suppose the thing about the last 9 months with this shock to my system and you arriving in my life, as I said to you, it was like there was a fucking angel at the doorstep. It was like, I didn't realize that at the time, but a few days later, it was like, oh my God, I've been visited. This is a visitation from an angel. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but I would say, yeah, I am trying, because I still have to work at it, trying to allow myself to be vulnerable, even though I sometimes don't feel I can take the pain. I know that unless I do that, I'm not going to get what I need for myself, or for me to develop. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, so yeah, there we go with the shifts in power. And I think, for me, arriving in a space where yeah, I just felt like I could rest. You gave me space to rest. I don't get to rest in this country. This country does not let Black people rest. Why do you think James Baldwin, Nina Simone, so many Black artists left so that they could do their work? Because there is no rest here. And so I feel like the exchange, you're like you got the visitation and I got to rest within the visitation.
Maybe I should make a little neon sign for the front yard. Angel rest stop.
Yes.
All welcome. With a little flashing cherub with an arrow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You got your pine nuts in there?
Yeah, it's done now.
Oh wow, that's beautiful, Bush.
I'm gonna let it rest and then I'm gonna eat it.
All right. I just want to put it out there if there's any questions at all. And did you get any questions from the YouTube live maybe?
Maybe there's nobody there, Mayfield.
Oh my God, that means that we just hung out for like.
We hung out.
You have a question, Anna?
Oh, no questions. I got a question. I want to dive back in somewhere in the conversation. When we were talking about a show.
A show.
Yeah. And I was very struck by two things. One was your compost show. You weren't seen.
Just my face and my hands and my feet. Should we look at an image of it?
Yeah. And there was an anteroom before you went into that room, correct?
Yes, there was a room where people could come and rest, have tea, calm their nervous systems. I had a lot of people kind of assisting me with that part. So they come in, somebody gives them tea, you know, they hear my voice talking about repair work. How are we repairing? Reparations, you know, but I'm more interested in like breaking that down because that's what it is. That's what the compost is doing. And so I'll share just an image as you're eating your beautiful squash. See if I can find performance images.
You're right about the pine nuts.
It's just exquisite, really.
Really nice.
Yeah. Can I see the inside of it? Oh, nice. Looking yummy. I'm gonna just share this screen so folks can see some images of viewing hours. This is one. That I did it in each season. So I was able to do it spring, summer, winter, fall. This was in autumn. And as you can see, the compost is looking really different here and than it would be. Oh no, that was actually winter. You can see the squash. Oh my gosh, there's the squash.
Oh, so there is.
And see, you can see my hands. My hands are exposed.
Oh.
And then this is fall. This is the fall one.
Now, something that surprised me when you told me about this, because my experience of compost, I nearly say it in the American way, compost, is it's warm inside, that it generates heat.
Yeah.
And yet you told me when you were in the compost that your body temperature plummeted and that you had to work quite hard to retain your body temperature.
Yeah.
That was a complete surprise to me.
It was a surprise to me. And the first time I did it, I had to, a friend was just kind of warming up my hands and putting a warm cloth on my face in between people visiting. So people would come into the space. It was more processional. And over a span of 2 hours, I'm under this weight, and you know, people are with me. I'm in repose, eyes closed, but people are with me, smelling the smells, seeing the colors, seeing the choreography of the breath, the rise and fall of the breath. And um, that first time I had to really like regulate my breath to just keep my body warm. And this one was outside, so I actually had a little clothing on just to help keep me warm because I was actually in the dirt like for this was at Mount Tremper Arts in New York, upstate New York, in the garden there. That was the only time I did it outdoors.
That's a beautiful image.
Yeah. The emerging is always something that's feels really good. My body is I feel like my body emerges really differently after being under that all of that weight for 2 hours. So
And are people, our audience, witness, whatever you call them, are they present for that? Or this is just a private?
yeah, sometimes it depends on the space. Like for the garden space, they were present for the emerging. This particular time, I did it with a group of African American artists, of Black artists. It was I called it Black Sleepover, and I invited them for this ritual. And then in the evening, I did it in the same place to the public. So it had two different, and it was a really beautiful healing ritual with the Black artists. There was a lot of holding, and once I emerged into the group, and we were all together, you know. With the public, it was like when I emerge, I go first, and they stay with the materials, and then they're led into the next part of the performance.
That I'm back again to this looking, witnessing.
Yeah, witnessing. Can I get a witness? That was one of the questions I asked before people come.
Uh-huh. And then back to Munich again, this moment in Munich. When you ask the audience, are you willing to give up your gaze for me?
Yes.
Which I just think is such a, I mean, maybe could you talk a little bit about that experience?
Whew. I mean, you know, it came out of this experience that I had in Munich where another artist and we were walking to the venue and we saw a sticker that said it's okay to be white. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And this apparently has been a trend with you know, white nationalists, kind of a reaction to the Black Lives Matter movement. And it really hurt me. It hurt me. You know, I was like, why would anybody take all of this time to post these stickers around like that? You know, like it's okay. And so what we did was we cut off the white part, so it just said it's okay to be. But I told the audience that story before I asked them to give up the white gaze, so that there was a context, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it irritated some people, you said.
Oh yeah, there are people who walked out. So
So
they were willing to leave. They gave up their gaze. They left. Which is, you know, that's another approach.
Uh-huh.
That's it. But I think we're about at time, and we have a little you know, since compost actually has a lot to do with not just decomposing but also like recomposing our soil, right? Like
Absolutely.
bringing life to the soil. which is really needed because we've lost so much of our topsoil, 70% in fact. And you know, there's this great song that we were listening to by Childish Gambino. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And it's about climate change. And again, I'm going through changes. And again, you know, we're decomposing. And again, you know, it's like giving up. It's like, what are you willing to give up for me? Or being able to have the space to rest, or being, you know, or being listened to. Like I felt like I could really hear you. I could really see you, or being witnessed. All of it is a part of the decomposition process.
So, thank you. Oh, apparently, can you stop sharing the screen, Mayfield? Yeah, there we go. So let's, well, as always, it was a joy talking to you, Mayfield.
And it is a delight to talk to you, Bush. And I'm wondering if I should play that song on the way out, or
let's shall we hear from Fabian? Are you there?
Sure, I'm here.
Okay, can you play the outro music, please?
That's
Yeah.
here.
yes.
Thanks to Plan B for making this happen. Thanks for anybody who showed up. Thanks to Anne.
Thank you. Thank you, Bush. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Plan B. Thank you, Fabian.
You can feel it on the streets.